Very much, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Graves, I'm very grateful for this subcommittee hearing. Think it indicates that our subcommittee wants to get beyond all of the interest that we've heard on infrastructure and see what we can really do. We know that a large infrastructure package the idea of a large infrastructure package, which is on the minds of many in the administration and on our minds, is not going to magically appear. We did a lot of, and I must say, I think deservedly so, a lot of self-congratulation when we passed the first surface transportation bill in 10 years. And I must say I'm very grateful, Mr. Chairman, that it was a good bipartisan effort. And I know you share with me the disappointment that in order to get any increase whatsoever after 10 years, we had to make a 6-year bill a 5-year bill. I don't know how long we can keep that kind of disinvestment from going on. And I say disinvestment because if you're not even investing in a state of good repair, much less the new infrastructure we need, you're not investing, we are disinvesting. And when I say disinvesting, remember how we built this country. Ever since this idea of the federal transportation infrastructure package was created by President Eisenhower, the country has understood that you can't be a great country unless you continuously invest in infrastructure of various kinds. Now, the Congressional Budget Office tells us that we face $139 billion shortfall in the Highway Trust Fund just over the next decade if we're trying to continue to fund the FAST Act funding levels. And it says we need 17 billion more a year than FAST Act levels at the federal level to improve our infrastructure and to maintain a state of good repair, reducing that backlog. Now, I'm very pleased that the President has said good things about infrastructure, so I hastened to get a hold of his so-called skinny budget and was very disappointed to see really unheard of cuts to popular transportation programs. So instead of investing, after my hopes had been raised, for example, in transit, urgently needed to alleviate congestion, President wants to stop all new investments in transit by cutting off the New Starts program. I'm grateful, nevertheless, for the continuing bipartisanship on this committee. I was pleased to sign a letter with Chairman Graves and the leadership of the full committee to urge the Appropriation Committee to fully fund all FAST Act programs as authorized for the remainder of 2017 and in the upcoming 2018 budget. I'm still banking on a president that talks about a $1 trillion proposal, at least supporting us as we fight to maintain the meager funding levels we had. And we know that the budget, I'm not terribly pulling my hair out that the president's cuts will go through, because no matter who is president, the appropriators always rewrite the budget. But I am concerned that the administration seems to be more enamored with pushing private capital and financing, which would end up making projects more expensive than traditional funding mechanisms and regulatory reforms. than making real investment. An investor-centered approach will do little to improve infrastructure across the nation. I mean, you simply can't build your infrastructure and expect that toll roads will somehow pay for it. There must be a revenue stream, and for the modern era in American life, it has always begun with this committee and subcommittee. Nor can we streamline our way out of inadequate funding. Secretary Chow said recently, the problem is not money. Imagine saying that about roads and transit. The problem is always money. She didn't say that. That was editorializing. It's the delays caused by the government permitting processes that hold up projects for years, even decades, making them risky investments. But in fact, if you check the data, only 4% of all infrastructure projects are nationwide undergo any rigorous environmental review. Most of it is what you and I see every day. 90% of projects proceed from categorical exclusion through the categorical exclusion process and are exempt from rigorous levels of review. A recent Inspector General report also refutes the notion that more streamlining now is the prudent cost of action. It concludes that additional streamlining provisions in the FAST Act are actually slowing down the U.S. Department of Transportation's ability to implement the project delivery accelerations put into MAP 21. In other words, piling streamlining measures on top of each other before they can be implemented simply does not help and, frankly, does not happen. I have always defended opportunities for public participation in NEPA and continue to believe that it helps us to improve the ultimate projects. Community input and buy-in are crucial to the successful and expeditious advancement of transportation projects. Gutting public participation in the name of cutting red tape is something that will harm our roads and will harm the constituents who use our roads and infrastructure. I don't believe we can reinvent the wheel when it comes to transportation and infrastructure. I just think there's no way around our obligation as the Congress of the United States to provide the states and local governments with the funding and the flexibility that they alone know what to do with to produce smart and efficient projects, allowing the states who have the wisdom, once we give them the money, to go ahead. I very much look forward to today's witnesses. I've read the headlines Mayor Reed about Atlanta and I-85. It would be interesting to hear what we can do and what you can do on that unforeseen circumstance. Thank you very much, and I look forward to the testimony. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ranking Member. Now turn to